Listen closely to this story. In 1848, there was a railroad foreman named Phineas Gage working on the Rutland and Burlington Railroad in Vermont. Picture this scene. He's tamping down explosive powder with an iron rod when suddenly, boom! The rod explodes through his skull. It enters below his left eye and shoots straight through the top of his head. Now, here's what's remarkable. He survived. He could walk, he could talk, he could function normally. But something profound had shifted. The man who emerged from that accident was no longer Phineas Gage, at least not the Phineas his friends and family knew. Before this happened, people described him as responsible, hardworking, well-balanced. After, he became impulsive, profane, erratic. His entire personality had transformed. Same body, same memories of the past, but a fundamentally different person inhabiting that form. His doctor wrote something chilling in his notes. Gage was no longer Gage. This wasn't just a medical curiosity. This was the first scientific proof of something that would shatter our understanding of human identity. The self you think you are is far more fragile than you've ever imagined. But here's what I want you to understand. Gage's story is just the beginning. Because what happened to him in that single explosive moment is actually happening to all of us every single day. We just don't notice it. The person you were when I started telling you this story is already gone, replaced by someone slightly different. And the truly unsettling part? You'll never notice the switch. You've felt glimpses of this dissolution before, though you probably dismissed them as nothing significant. Think about those moments when you catch yourself in the mirror, and for just a split second, you don't recognize the person staring back. Or when you remember being absolutely certain about something, only to discover you held the complete opposite belief just years ago. There's that eerie feeling when you hear a recording of your own voice and think, "That's not me." But it becomes even more peculiar. Have you ever experienced what is called the Mandela effect? That uncanny sensation of remembering something that never happened, or remembering it differently than everyone else does? Thousands of people swear they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, when he actually died in 2013. Others are convinced the children's book series was called The Berenstain Bears, when it was always The Berenstain Bears. Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell us about it in the comments. Now, these aren't just quirky memory glitches. They're cracks in the foundation of selfhood itself, revealing something profoundly disturbing. If your memories can be wrong about external events, what does that say about your memories of who you are? Consider this carefully. Every belief you hold about yourself is built on memory. You think you're kind because you remember acts of kindness. You believe you're intelligent because you recall moments of insight. You know you're consistent because your memory tells you a coherent story about your past. But what if that story is as unreliable as remembering a fictional death or a misremembered book title? There's a neuroscientist named Elizabeth Loftus who discovered something that should terrify anyone who believes in a solid sense of self. In her groundbreaking research on false memories, she found that not only can memories be altered, but entirely false memories can be implanted and will feel completely real to the person experiencing them. In one study, she convinced people they had been lost in a shopping mall as children, an event that never happened. Within days, these memories became vivid, detailed, and emotionally charged. Think about this. If a researcher can implant a false childhood memory in a matter of days, how many of your own formative memories, the ones that define who you think you are accurate? How many of the stories you tell yourself about your identity are simply elaborate fictions your brain has constructed. There's an ancient philosophical puzzle called the ship of Theseus. Imagine a ship that has all its parts gradually replaced, piece by piece. Is it still the same ship? It seems like an abstract thought experiment until you realize it's literally happening inside your head right now. Every 7 years, nearly every cell in your body is replaced. The neurons firing in your brain as you listen to these words weren't there a decade ago. The skin you're sitting in, the heart pumping blood through your veins, even the bones that give structure to your form, all different matter than what composed you 10 years ago. So if your body is entirely new, and your thoughts are constantly changing, and your memories can't be trusted, then what exactly is the continuous you that supposedly links your past to your present? The answer might be more disturbing than you're prepared for. There isn't one. There's a Buddhist neuroscientist named Judson Brewer who made a startling discovery while studying the brains of advanced meditators. When experienced practitioners entered deep meditative states, something remarkable appeared on the brain scans. The default mode network. That's the region associated with self-referential thinking and the sense of having a continuous identity. It went dark. Not reduced, not altered. It essentially turned off. Yet these meditators remained conscious. They were still aware, still present, still experiencing reality. They had simply lost the sense of being a separate self navigating that reality. And here's what's most unsettling. They reported feeling more awake, more aware, and more themselves than ever before. Think about that paradox. When the brain regions responsible for selfhood shut down, people feel more authentically themselves. It's as if the very mechanism that creates your sense of identity is also what obscures your true nature. Here's where modern neuroscience reveals something that would have seemed like science fiction just decades ago. Your brain isn't passively receiving reality and then deciding how to respond. It's predicting reality before you even experience it, then adjusting those predictions based on incoming sensory data. This predictive processing happens so fast and so seamlessly that you never notice it. Right now, as you listen to these words, your brain is generating the experience of listening before your ears even process each sound. It's creating the sensation of whatever you're sitting on before your skin confirms the contact. It's constructing your sense of being a person hearing these ideas before you consciously decide to engage with the material. Andy Clark, one of the leading researchers in this field, describes consciousness as a controlled hallucination, your brain's best guess about what's happening, constantly updated by sensory input, but never truly accurate to objective reality. You're not experiencing the world. You're experiencing your brain's simulation of the world. This explains why optical illusions work, why magic tricks are possible, and why two people can witness the exact same event and have completely different experiences of what happened. But it also explains something far more profound. Why your sense of self feels so real when it's actually just another prediction your brain is making. Your brain is constantly generating the experience of being a continuous self, a unified identity navigating through time. But this self is just as much a construction as the colors you see or the sounds you hear. There's no more a real self inside your head than there are real colors in light waves or real sounds in vibrating air molecules. Benjamin Libet conducted some famous experiments in the 1980s that revealed something that shattered our understanding of free will. Brain activity indicating a decision begins several hundred milliseconds before people report being consciously aware of deciding. Your brain decides before you decide. But who exactly is this you that thinks it's making decisions? More recent neuroscience has pushed this finding even further. Using advanced brain scanning technology, researchers can now predict with startling accuracy what someone will choose up to 10 seconds before the person reports being aware of making the choice. 10 seconds is an eternity in brain time, long enough for thousands of neural calculations to occur. This means the experience of making a choice, of being an agent who weighs options and decides, is a story your brain creates after the fact to explain decisions that were already made by unconscious processes. The decider is a narrative the brain tells itself about what already happened. But here's what's truly mind-bending. If there's no central decision-maker, then what is the self that supposedly exists between decisions? What is this continuous identity that claims ownership of thoughts that arise spontaneously, decisions that happen unconsciously, and memories that may be entirely fictional? Thomas Metzinger, a neuroscientist who spent decades mapping the neural correlates of selfhood, arrived at a startling conclusion. The self is a transparent model created by the brain. It's transparent because you can't see it as a model. It appears to be reality itself. But it's still just a model, a useful fiction that helps the brain organize information and navigate the world. Think of it like the user interface on a computer. When you click on a file icon, you're not interacting with the actual data. You're interacting with a simplified representation that makes the complex underlying processes accessible. Your sense of self is the same kind of interface, a simplified representation of incredibly complex neural processes that gives you the illusion of being a unified agent. Perhaps most disturbing of all is the growing evidence that even when the self model is active, it's not singular. You're not one person. You're more like a temporary coalition of different neural processes that sometimes cooperate and sometimes conflict. People with dissociative identity disorder provide the most dramatic example, where completely different personalities can inhabit the same body, each with different memories, preferences, and even different allergic reactions. But this phenomenon isn't limited to clinical cases. We all experience multiple, sometimes contradictory aspects of ourselves. There's the you that makes responsible decisions about diet and exercise, and the you that reaches for junk food at midnight. There's the you that commits to long-term goals, and the you that abandons them when things get difficult. There's the you that interacts with your parents, and the entirely different you that emerges with close friends. These aren't just different roles or masks you wear. Neuroscience shows they're actually different neural networks becoming dominant at different times, each creating its own version of you. The unified self that supposedly orchestrates all these different aspects is yet another story the brain tells to maintain the illusion of consistency. Now, if all of this sounds terrifying, you're not alone. The ego mind recoils from the suggestion that it might not be real, that the story of continuous selfhood might be the brain's most elaborate magic trick. But here's what's remarkable. People who have directly realized the illusory nature of self consistently report it as the most liberating experience possible. When the constructed self dissolves, what remains isn't emptiness or void. It's pure awareness itself. Consciousness without the constant mental commentary about my experience or what this means for me. It's like discovering that you thought you were a wave your entire life, only to realize you were always the ocean. This isn't just mystical poetry. Advanced meditators who have stabilized these states show measurable changes in brain activity that correlate with decreased anxiety, increased compassion, and what researchers describe as unconditional well-being. happiness that doesn't depend on external circumstances because there's no separate self to be made happy or unhappy. Sam Harris, a contemporary neuroscientist, describes it this way: the feeling of being a separate self, positioned behind your eyes and looking out at a world that is separate from yourself, is an illusion. When this illusion falls away, what remains is consciousness itself, open, empty, and luminous. So if the self is an illusion, what are you really? This is where the inquiry becomes deeply personal, because you can't think your way to the answer. You have to look directly. Right now, notice that you're aware of listening to these words. There's an awareness present that's recognizing the sounds, understanding the meaning, following the logical flow of ideas. This awareness is obvious and undeniable. It's the one constant in all your experiences. Now notice something remarkable. This awareness doesn't seem to be located anywhere specific. You can't find it in your head, behind your eyes, or in any particular part of your body. It's simply present, open, spacious. Notice too that this awareness isn't thinking about the words. It's simply aware of thoughts arising and passing away. It's not making decisions about what to focus on. It's simply aware of attention moving and shifting. It's not creating emotions. It's simply aware of feelings appearing and dissolving. This awareness is what you actually are. Not the thoughts, not the emotions, not the sensations, not the memories, not even the sense of being a person having these experiences. You are the awareness in which all of these phenomena appear and disappear. The beautiful paradox is that this awareness has no properties, no characteristics, no boundaries, and yet it's the most intimate aspect of your existence. It's closer than your own thoughts, more fundamental than your sense of identity, more constant than any experience you've ever had. Once you begin to recognize the difference between awareness itself and the contents of awareness, between what you are and what appears within you, something profound shifts. The drama of personal identity starts to lose its grip. The stories you tell yourself about who you are begin to feel less solid, less important, less real. This doesn't mean you lose the capacity to function in the world or relate to others. The self model continues to operate when needed, like software running in the background. But you're no longer identified with it. You recognize it as a useful tool rather than your true identity. Problems that once seemed overwhelming become less personal. Emotions arise and pass through awareness like weather patterns in an empty sky. Thoughts come and go without the constant narrative of, "I'm thinking this," or, "What does this mean about me?" What emerges is a radical freedom. Not the freedom to get what you want, but freedom from the one who wants. Not the freedom to control your experience, but freedom from the one who needs to control. Cutting-edge research in quantum consciousness suggests something even more profound. Awareness itself might be fundamental to the universe, not an emergent property of complex brains. Just as matter and energy are basic features of reality, consciousness might be a primary characteristic of existence itself. If this is true, then what you really are isn't produced by your brain. Your brain is something that appears within what you are. You're not a temporary arrangement of atoms that somehow generates awareness. You're the awareness in which atoms, brains, bodies, and entire universes appear. This perspective dissolves the boundary between inner and outer, self and world, observer and observed. There's just one seamless field of consciousness, appearing as countless different forms, but never actually divided or separate. From this view, the question, "Who am I?" reveals itself as fundamentally confused. It assumes there's someone to find, something that could be identified as the true self. But what you are has no opposite, no boundaries, no characteristics that could distinguish it from anything else. You are the very capacity for experience itself. So how do you live from this understanding? How do you navigate a world designed for separate selves when you've seen through the illusion of separation? The answer isn't to reject the conventional world or abandon practical responsibilities. It's to engage fully while holding everything lightly, to play your role completely while knowing it's just a role, to care deeply about life while not taking yourself too seriously. This is the ultimate paradox. The more you realize your true nature as limitless awareness, the more naturally you can function as a healthy human being. When there's no self to protect or improve, you're free to respond to life with spontaneous wisdom and compassion. The fear that you'll become disconnected or apathetic if you see through the self-illusion proves to be unfounded. What actually happens is the opposite. You become more present, more engaged, more alive. Without the constant filter of, how does this affect me? You can respond to situations more clearly and appropriately. The evidence is overwhelming. The person you think you are doesn't exist the way you think it does. Your memories are unreliable. Your body is temporary. Your thoughts arise without a thinker. Your decisions happen before you're aware of them. And your sense of continuous identity is a neurological construction. But this isn't cause for despair. It's an invitation to the most profound freedom possible. Because what you actually are, this awareness that's listening to these words right now, is unlimited, unbound, and utterly indestructible. You can't lose what you really are because you never became it. You can't find yourself because you were never lost. You can't improve awareness because it's already perfect. You can't get enlightened because you already are the light of consciousness itself. The spiritual search ends not in finding something new, but in recognizing what was always already here. The person who began this journey of inquiry dissolves into the very awareness that was seeking, and what remains is what you've always been: the open, empty, cognizant space in which all experience appears. There's a beautiful irony in all of this. The more you look for yourself, the more obvious it becomes that there's no one there to find. The harder you try to figure out who you are, the clearer it becomes that what you are can't be figured out. The more you attempt to improve or fix the self, the more apparent it becomes that what needs no improvement is what you already are. This isn't a philosophy to believe or a theory to understand. It's a recognition that can happen in this very moment. The awareness that's present right now, listening to these words, contemplating these ideas, perhaps feeling some resistance or curiosity, this awareness is what you are. Not the thoughts about awareness, not the feelings about this recognition, not the person who might or might not get it, but the aware space in which all of these experiences are appearing and disappearing. You are that which never comes and never goes, never changes and never remains the same, never exists as an object, and never doesn't exist. You are the mystery of being itself, appearing as a human being, having this very experience in this very moment. The question isn't whether you're ready to see through the illusion of self. The question is whether you're ready to stop overlooking what you've always already been. In the end, there's nothing to achieve, nowhere to go, and no one to become. There's just this: awareness recognizing itself as the source and substance of all experience. And that recognition changes everything while changing nothing at all. The person who started listening to this and the person who finishes it are both equally illusory. But the awareness that witnessed this entire journey, that never started, never ended, and never changed, is what you really are.